Hello, everybody. You're in the green room for DisrupTV. It means we're looking at Chinese satellite balloons somewhere between Canada and the US. No, just kidding. We've got better things to talk about here. We get some amazing guests. I'm Ray Wong. I've got my awesome co-host, Vala Afshar, and of course, Elle, our amazing producer. And we'll introduce our guests in reverse order. So starting with Jennifer, where are you dialing in from? What are we talking about today?
Well, I'm dialing in from Waterloo, Kitchener-Waterloo, which is not too far from Toronto in Canada. And we're going to be talking about stress and burnout and how to fix it and what are the big problems that we need to solve in the workforce right now.
The tech cradle of Canada. Very, very cool. David, where are you calling in from? What are we talking about today?
From London, England. Hi, everyone. We're going to talk about ChatGPT as a revolutionary tool that can empower people to make changes like never before.
Are we sure you're you? We'll have to figure that out. We'll find out more. Christina, where are you calling in from? What are we talking about today?
Yes, so calling from Denver, and we are going to talk about how we can grow efficiently while, scaling in this environment.
Very, very cool. Growth mindset. All right, we're all set now. Elle, ready? On your end.
Yeah, we are ready to go. 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on DisrupTV. My name is Vala Afshar. I'm the Chief Digital Evangelist at Salesforce and your co-host for the next hour. We welcome you to follow us on Twitter at DisrupTV Show. Send Ray, myself, our distinguished guests, your questions live using hashtag DisrupTV, and we'll do our best to answer them in the next hour. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Ray Wong. He's the founder, CEO of Constellation Research. He's the best-selling author of Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Ray's a regular television business and tech news contributor on Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, Bloomberg, CNBC. Just about every day he's on TV. He's a global sought-after keynote speaker, and in my humble opinion, one of the top futures to follow on Twitter at RWANG0. Welcome, Ray Wong, to DisrupTV.
Hey, thanks a lot. I'm here with my awesome co-host and co-founder, Vala Afshar. And as you mentioned, he's the Chief Digital Evangelist for Salesforce. He's also the author of The Pursuit of Social Business Excellence. And executives around the world pay attention to every one of his inspirational and insightful tweets. But when he's not hosting, keynoting, or leading events at Salesforce, you can find him speaking on business TV outlets such as Bloomberg and posting insightful analyses on ZDNet. I hear he might be writing a new book, but we'll find out more about that one day. But it's not about us. It's about our amazing guests. And who do we have to kick it off today?
We're privileged to have Cristina Vila Vives, CEO of Cledara, joining us today, co-founder of Cledara, a London-based leading platform that combines management tools for teams with a payment platform to help companies take control of the software they use to run their businesses. Today, Cledara operates in the US, UK, and 28 other countries, and is backed by incredible companies, Athemis, Techstars, Latuna Capital, and others. Cledara was named SaaS Startup of the Year and one of the 10 hottest startups in Europe by FinTech 50. Cristina was named a top 5 female founder in enterprise SaaS outside of the US by Melinda Gates, Pivotal Ventures, and Microsoft M12. Cristina also won the EMEA Woman in Payments Unicorn Challenge and was featured in Forbes Spain as one of the 21 change makers of the year for the work Cledara is doing in reshaping how companies think about software. You can follow Cristina on Twitter at CrisVilaVives. Welcome, Cristina, to DisrupTV.
Yes, thank you for having me, Vala and Ray. It's really an honor to be in the show.
Honor's ours.
Hey, we're happy to have you. And, one of the most timely topics right now is really about how we grow efficiently in the environment. You're seeing everything from workforce reductions. You're seeing people optimize, try to do more with less. We're seeing a real wave of automation that's happening out there. And we're also looking at the revenue side of things. So how do you do it? How do you grow efficiently in this environment?
So for us, the key really, it's around three things. So one is really keeping track of metrics, right? So knowing what you're measuring, that's always what's going to really help the organization know where it needs to go. Then the capital allocation. So once we know what we're measuring, once we know what we want to do, then how much we're going to put towards each of the different initiatives. And then when we know that those are working, obviously double down on those ones. And then there is messaging and positioning. So we make sure that at all times we are relevant, right, for the market context, because that keeps changing. So I would say those are the key three things that, especially in these changing environments, we need to make sure that we keep close eye as a company.
Yeah, I appreciate the emphasis on measurements and data and analytics. I'm assuming that the stakeholders that you partner with in terms of your clients are folks in finance, folks in operations, IT security, because of the compliance around payments and finance. What type of metrics matter to these different lines of business, and what are the metrics that matter to you as the CEO and founder to ensure that you're delivering the right value to your clients?
Yeah, so we tend to measure things at company level, team level, and then obviously individual level. And then the most important thing about what you measure is that the company actually is aware of it, because otherwise it serves no purpose. And that's one step that sometimes we forget about, because we know it, so we think everybody knows it. So then at the company level, for example, at the moment, we are very focused on growth rate. I think that's always, but we still need to keep an eye, even though people are saying, hey, you have to be a bit more conservative, but growth is critical. We all have to keep growing. There is no excuse for that one. What we absolutely need to be much more mindful is the burn multiple. So, okay, at which cost are you actually growing? Right. So if you're spending tons of money and okay, you're growing lots, but you will just never become profitable as a business, that just doesn't work anymore. And then
why not? But why not?
Well, I think it's gonna be a tough sell these days. So then yes. So and then the other one that we are very focused is margin. So this would be the tricky things at the company level. At the team level, again, it depends on each team, but we always make sure that it aligns to whatever it is that the company as a whole wants to achieve. So from let's say sales, we'll check obviously sales cycles, conversion rates for, we are growing a lot still as a company. We still want to triple this year, right? So it means we need to increase our headcount. So somebody that we are really being very mindful is the health of our hiring funnel. Do we have enough candidates to be able to, get that growth going? So every company really needs to understand what is the most important for us this year, so that we can then align the whole organization behind it, and then have the right ways of communicating. Right? What is your communication strategy across the company? We start everything with the budgeting cycle. You could call us traditionalists, but in the end, companies do it for a reason. So we get everybody to align on what it is that we want to achieve. We communicate that at the very high level. Then we will have our quarterly alignment meetings. We'll have our bi-weekly meetings with everybody in the company to make sure that everybody knows whether we are doing what we said we would do, or whether we are not doing it, and if not, why. So we always have an opportunity to course correct in real time.
It's a tremendous amount of transparency, alignment, trust, accountability. You're dialing in from Denver, so yeah. London-based company, but obviously you serve clients around the globe. How often are you time sharing across the pond? And has that increased more now that the society as a whole seems to be more comfortable, combating the pandemic?
So we are here, or I'm in Denver, because we are now making a push at growing the operations here in the US. Yeah. And then in terms of my time share, well, I try to go to either Barcelona, which is where we have an office, or in London, every 4 to 5 weeks. So quite a lot of travel at the moment, including, all the other travel that I need to do at the same time. I'm still I've always been a believer on in-person things. So even though Zoom and all these technologies are great, there is nothing like being with the team in person. So it's something that since day one we've advocated for. And we have beautiful offices in all the locations, and I just love being with the team. So
That's awesome.
I'm very happy doing that travel.
That's awesome.
No problem. Hey, the piece I want to ask is really about this growth mindset. Are we out of this growth mindset in the sense of grow at all cost, or have we transitioned to a different type of growth, right? As you're kind of identifying here. And I wanted to go a little bit deeper because, startups have had that mentality to have a growth mindset, grow at all costs, get to scale, hit escape velocity, and then we'll deal with it, right? I mean, that was how all the startups were funded that way. And now it looks like the environment has changed. Interest rates are up, labor conditions are in a certain place, valuations have come down. And let's just describe this mindset a little bit more in terms of where are we and what kind of growth are investors expecting, or that you're helping companies prepare for?
Yeah, so it's this, right? So we've all been in the past 10 years really gearing up for just grow, and it doesn't matter, just keep growing. So, and that's a scary place, right?
Yep,
because
yep.
for the first time, things are changing, and employees are like, oh my goodness, what's happening? So everybody's getting laid off from their companies, and they know people, that they've lost their jobs every week, right? They hear about a different company, and so obviously that's not a good place. And for us, the key, in making sure that we navigate this well, right? Because it's a must now. We have to grow effectively and efficiently. We cannot just throw things at the wall and see what sticks anymore. So we really rely on something that you mentioned. Actually, you mentioned trust, right? Trust is so important, right? You really need to build that within the organization so that when you decide to hit the brakes and say, okay, this is changing now, that the organization can absorb it. And it can absorb it because ultimately you've been growing and creating this value system within the organization. That's what creates this trust, which means that when you choose to start doing things differently, the organization follows you. Now, this is something that it's not something that you can do from one day to the next, but it's absolutely true that companies need to be mindful of that, because otherwise in times of change, it's much harder to get people to follow and adapt to those changes, and then tend to look for alternatives elsewhere. Because they start thinking, oh, this company is not the company that I joined, so I'm going to just go look somewhere else. But actually, if you continue to be true to your core values as a business, then you can retain your employees and get them to follow you in your change journey much more easily.
It's I mentioned trust because in a software as a service industry and the subscription model, you really do have to earn the trust of your paying customer. Mm-hmm. You have to earn future business. So my question: what are some trends that you're seeing in the subscription model space, especially since with all the micro and macro level economic, I'd say, uncertainties that we have experienced over the last 12 months. I mean, 12 months ago on the show, it was all about quiet quitting and the quitting revolution and all these terminologies used to talk about an employee-led market. And now, in January, just in the tech sector, we're approaching over 100,000 reductions in force. So what's the impact on the subscription models and how business leaders view investing in software as a service?
So something that we've observed is that, so during the, these growth years, a lot of companies started to shift towards this, usage-based pricing models. So that was super popular. That's what investors wanted to see. And it was almost like, the paying per seat was obsolete. Like now everything had to be usage-based. Turns out that when companies are mindful of their cost, usage goes down, right? And maybe now, what used to be a very good option to increase your net revenue retention now is actually not the best options because it's actually declining. And what we are seeing is that people are shifting back from these usage-based pricing models to, for example, per seat pricing models, so more of that traditional thing that we used to see before.
Oh, it's a great point, right? Pricing comes down to user-based, usage-based, and platforms. And it's the manipulation of those three that actually generate the right value ratios for customers. So that is going to be a big shift. And one of those areas that you do talk about, and that's interesting, is really, what do customers do when they're not in a SaaS model? Are there use cases where customers should actually address this very differently?
So I think all companies are in SaaS or are going to go to SaaS. Now, I was just reading some report from Gartner saying that despite all what's going on, right, the SaaS market will still, or the software market will still grow at 9.3% this year, and will end up somewhere towards like $900 billion spent on software. So it's still growing, right? So companies are still adopting, and this was a report I think done speaking to CIOs in companies that yes, they are reducing costs, but actually they are still increasing the software spend, which means that the opportunity is still there. So I don't think we are going anywhere. We are not abandoning SaaS anytime soon.
We have a lot of entrepreneurs and startup founders that have been guests and watched the show. As a successful co-founder, CEO, what advice do you have for someone like yourself? Let's go back to 2018. It's your first company. Obviously, courage and optimism and work ethics had to be part of a first-time entrepreneur having the success you have. But is there a formula that you could share with someone who's looking up to you and wants to do exactly what Cristina did, start a business and help delight customers?
And let me add to that. Are there things that if you could do all over again, that you'd say, I should never have done that? So,
yes, sure. So 2 things. So one is talk to customers. I think you can never talk to enough customers. Like even now, 5 years in, and we have, a much bigger team than when it was just me. I still try to talk to customers every month, right? I do want it because it's the only way to remain connected, because it's this, markets evolve, right? Needs evolve. So you just have to still be part of that reality and not create your own within your, the boundaries of your organization. The other thing, and that's relevant today, right, would be don't let the market be an excuse, right? Own your destiny. Just because sometimes it's very easy to say, oh, well, the markets are down. That's why, we are not growing. I mean, come on, it cannot be like that, right? So you really have to think, okay, yes, the markets are going down and the market is changing. So how can we adapt so that we can take this opportunity, right? And I think that's super important. And then the thing that I wouldn't do if I could go back in time, I think that I wouldn't. That's a hard one. Yeah. Sometimes I thought that I needed things ahead of time, and I hired for roles too early. And then that was creating a big distraction for me because I didn't quite know what I needed from that person that, I hired because it was great. And then it was more of a distraction, and it was not good for me. It was not good for the company, and it was not good for the person that I mishired, let's say, because it was way too early for the business.
I love that. So talk to customers, own your own destiny. I love that. That's a good tweet, by the way. And don't potentially hire ahead of need. Make sure that, the jobs to be done are there before you hire. Great advice. Thank you, Cristina. That was great.
Yeah, we've got some great advice here. We're here with Cristina Vila Vives, CEO at Cledara, and you can follow her on Twitter at CrisVilaVives. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your insights.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cristina.
Take care.
Awesome. Own your own destiny. I like that. No,
and don't overhire ahead. I think I've done it a number of times.
Yeah. If there's a lot of good books on the formula to hire. It's hard though. It's I think more of an art than science. But Okay, so talk about owning your own destiny. Man, if you want to own your destiny for the next 10, 20, 30 years, you better know a little bit about generative AI. And our next guest wrote a book about it before it was a white hot topic. So talk about David being a true trailblazer.
The futurist.
David Boyle,
Futurist.
yes, director at Audience Strategies, an agency that helps brands use deep understanding of their audiences to drive growth. Exactly what our past guest, our CEO, said. Talk to your customers so you understand their needs. David has 20 plus years of experience. Looking at David, looks like he started when he was 8, using technology to develop audience intelligence and strategies capabilities in creative industries. His work has changed the culture and economics of the world's most prestigious entertainment and luxury brands, including EMI Music, HarperCollins Publishing, BBC, Masterclass, and Harrods, to name a few. David's an author of Prompt, a practical guide. You see it over my head, a practical guide to brand growth using ChatGPT. In the book, you're going to find about 161 worked examples. So it's a really incredible, instructive book. Prompt is the ultimate guide to growing your brand through generative AI-powered marketing and product strategies, and it will provide you with the knowledge and skills you need to harness the power of, again, generative AI to get ahead. You can follow David on Twitter at BEGIEN. Welcome, David, to DisrupTV.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Thank you for joining us during dinner time. You know, you're dialing in from London, so appreciate
it's very nice. Pub time, actually.
Pub time, yes.
Well, hey, what better can we talk about pub time than ChatGPT? It's in every single chat conversation, everywhere, in every bar. But hey, the more important thing here is really, I want to know about your background, right? It sounds like you've got right brain, left brain. We're talking analytics and creativity. Those are two things that we haven't always put together. It's great intersection of interesting skills. But how'd you get from here, like from music industry to talking about data-driven insights? I mean, it's an interesting journey. So.
Yeah, I think you get there by making an awful lot of mistakes along the way. So I'm a data nerd at heart, mathematician by training, and I have a weird passion in life, which is like helping data to be very, very useful. And I think I ended up in the creative industries, not by choice, by the way. And then I realized how magical it is when you can help artists or labels or creative people to use data, because they normally don't want to. They're normally quite skeptical. And so that brought me this extra kick. And the impact that the creative industries has on people's lives, like that felt special to me. So I left the creative industries and thought, I'll go do this again in brands. And I realized it's just not as much fun. It's not as impactful. So like creativity is where my heart is. And those hard lessons of like messing it up because you think data is the answer, and it turns out that creativity is important, and finding that balance is just so much fun.
That's awesome. So it is remarkable. So OpenAI was founded December 2015, so it's 7 years old and change. But it was really December of last year, actually November of last year, when the world, within 5 days, it reached 1 million users. The world in November 22nd, I believe, of 2022, is when most of us really, saw the power in generative AI and in DALL-E and others. So 2022 in general was a good year in terms of exposing the masses at this technology of creating new content. And so how did the idea of writing the book Prompt come about? And what was it that allowed you to be a really, really early adopter of talking about this phenomenon?
Well, I got to start by saying it was a bit of a surprise to me as well, because I've never been a particularly early adopter of technology. Yeah. That said, a lot of businesses I've worked with think I am, but I'm like a fast follower. I'll wait for something.
Breaking news: David is a fast follower.
Wait for something to be proven. Wait for it to be practically useful. Wait for the hype to die away, and then help people to use it. So I've always pushed tech, always to scale, to democratize access to data, always. But I've never been at the forefront. But this new tech drops. I played with the GPT stuff before ChatGPT came out. Yeah, that was fine. ChatGPT drops, and I'm like, oh, this is different, because right now, today, with no hype, it can change everything about how we work. So my co-author and I, who've worked together for 15 years, we played with it. We were sending each other examples. You start by writing poems or explaining technical terms in the style of Snoop Dogg. And then eventually you're like, oh, this can help with work as well. We all do that, right? And we ended up.
Mine is Dr. Dre, but okay, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. After a few days, we had this moment, and we called each other. It's like, this is not just a joke, right? This actually can change everything we spent 20 years working really hard on. Yeah. In which case, we should stop what we're doing and just work out how to do this properly, shouldn't we? Yeah. And then our instinct is always to help other people, to share or to like democratize. So we're like, we should write a book, right? 20 years of expertise in craft and process in building brands. And we just like worked really hard to work out how ChatGPT could help. We wrote it all down and we published 23rd of December so that we could have a quiet Christmas with our families. And I think there's a big lesson there though, which is like, if you know what you're doing, 20 years of like messing it up and learning tough lessons, it's relatively easy to apply new tech to that. But if you don't, if you've got no guidance, no strategy, then you're going to be lost. And I think that's an important lesson for all technology, especially AI.
Literally within 7 years, 1 week, OpenAI was December 11th, and you, December 23rd, launch your book. And I want you to share with us how you approach being on DisrupTV and your experiment in terms of our podcast and how you could best add value to our listeners, because I thought it was super interesting.
Yeah,
I think of AI as being like an electric bike for the brain. So it makes it quicker and you can tackle bigger problems and more easily than you otherwise would have done, but you still got to pedal. So what I did was to say, all right, I need to work out what these guys are going to ask, what types of topics they talk about. So I'm like, how can I do that in the most leveraged way? So I pointed an AI at the videos of your previous shows, and then I asked it, what type of questions do they ask? Great. And I put that into ChatGPT along with a synopsis from the book and my career. And I said, hey, what questions might they ask me? And then also like, what answers should I give? And I know you haven't used any of them, so thanks for that.
We want you back on the show, so we're going to save that for your second.
No. We're improving your LLMs by adding new data. That's what's going on here.
That's right.
I think one lesson I learned, like there, for example, one lesson is like you don't need to recreate the wheel on this stuff. Like, so I don't need to like listen to all the shows to work it out. Like, I can get that in my head, and I don't need to work out how it applies to me, because an LLM can do that for me. What I do need to do is work out which questions make sense, which ones need rewording, and which ones need enhancing. And that's a much better use of my time than like the first draft.
I like your, you still need to pedal. So even if it's an e-bike, you still need to pedal. Paul Graham's talked about just AI in general as like a calculator for thinking and writing. But I like your bicycle and pedal analogy more. Go ahead, Ray. I know you're dying to ask a question.
I'm going to actually take one of the questions that was generated, just so that we can actually make the LM feel good about itself. But there's a lot of talk really about, is AI taking away human creativity, or is it actually improving human creativity? And what is that in terms of, when do we insert a human in the process, right? Because a lot of times if you don't insert a human in the process, we end up with Skynet, right? And it's like, oh, wait, what happened here? And so the human in the loop is intentional friction, an intentional set of controls. And so what do you suggest for that, given all the experimentation you've done, the fail fast you've done, and of course, the lessons you've learned?
I'm going to talk just about my area of expertise, which is building brands, understanding audiences, and then working out how to do things differently to build brands. And I can tell you, after 20 years of doing that, first, ChatGPT or LLMs or AIs like help immensely at every step. That's point number one. Immensely at every step, full stop. That's remarkable. But it doesn't know where to start. You've got to start it. You've got to tell it what the problem is. You've got to define the category or the audience or the business problem in your own words, not the client's words, by the way, because they're not right. In your words as a strategist. And then you get a good answer sometimes, usually, maybe, but you need to nudge it, iterate, update your prompts. And then you need to know where to go next. Where do I elaborate? Where do I reject the answer? Where do I enhance it with my own perspective? add special knowledge I have about the brand or the marketplace, and so there's quite a lot of human involvement there. At the start, it's 100% human. At the end, I think it should always be 100% human. Like, I own that document I sent to you. In the middle, that's where the LLM can help you quite a lot in what it does. That for me is a very firm lesson in my
So we're
area.
still pedaling on this e-bike, Vala.
Yeah, but what will the e-bike look like a decade from now? This company that we're talking about, or this technology, it's the last 5 to 10 years that we saw incredible processing, storage, access to hyperscalers that allowed us to create models at a fraction of a cost. So take us, David, to 2033. And let's take us to a typical marketing organization who was an early adopter of AI. And for 10 years, like, does PR function exist? I mean, I don't mean to, I always think that you're more
Does
like.
anyone need to write press releases,
Well, yeah. Or web copy, press release. I mean, the content that's still creative, but ultimately over time looks a lot very similar in nature. It seems like very deterministic in its construct. But your thoughts 10 years from now, marketing and use of technologies like ChatGPT.
Yeah, I have a very clear view on this, which is that it just enables everybody to do more, take on more, build better and more brands, full stop. So I think, many tasks that today need me to start it, manage it, and then end it, won't need me in the same way in future. They won't. And so I'll be freed up. Right, what do I do with that free time? Do I go sit on a beach? Or do I take on extra clients and more brands and personalize it for more countries? Because there's infinite possible complexity in the world. I could do 10 more brands or personalize it for different countries or different audiences or different campaigns or strategies. And at the moment, there's so much like slightly lazy thinking, like, well, we'll just do Europe and treat Europe like Europe. Right, in future, we can personalize it for every single country. So there's infinite possible complexity and optimization and products that could be launched. We'll just do more. So that means we'll make it easier.
Yeah, and small
do
businesses.
more with less.
Yeah. And small businesses, large enterprises, I mean, they're all going to be empowered, right? So I've got a realtor friend in Austin named Philip, right? He's showing houses to a bunch of clients. Like, he can just basically generate the whole realtor flyer, like, on the fly. He doesn't even have to do that anymore. Run it in through, a GPT to do it with a large model and basically know exactly what words to do to target each individual, right? I mean, it's personalization at scale, right?
You can take on more categories of property or more towns or other businesses at the same time because he can handle more now. Absolutely. I think the big problem there is if you don't buy an electric bike or adopt it or work out how to use it, you're in big trouble, right? Because the guy next to you is suddenly like pedaling much faster.
Oh, the arms race effect. Yes.
You're in big trouble. And I think this is a generational challenge, which is that older people are less likely to want to do this. Younger people are. That's incredibly empowering, which means that the young intern who never had a voice at the table can now take a strategy paper to the chief executive, which is very, very good. I had a business I was working with, and the CEO gave a talk about how we all need to use AI now. This is a multi-billion-dollar business. And then somebody messaged me like, hey, the CEO's just given a talk about AI. You wrote that book, right? Like, how can I use it? And I was like, do this. And then she's like, I got so many brownie points for that. You would not believe. Thank you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. I have a daughter who's a sophomore at a very good business school, very expensive business school. I wonder how many, I won't go there, but let's just say I get a 5 Series BMW every year, but I don't get to keep it. What are your do you have insights in terms of curriculum that's being taught to these interns that are now joining the workforce in their early 20s? Are they learning about, or do they have the mathematic, critical thinking, and even exposure to these technologies at an early or not, I suppose early, but undergraduate level, college, university?
Well, that's a good question. So I think you've got colleges who are like rejecting this, thinking it's like plagiarism. Yep. That feels wonky. Yeah. Most professors I talk to, like, no surprise, are saying, how can we use it? Like, how can we integrate it? One of the one big college I'm talking to is like, can you teach a class on this? I'm like, yes, I can. But you know what? Actually, it needs to be integrated into every other class. That's the big impact. Because if I don't know how to write a press release, I certainly can't use ChatGPT. If I don't know how to do a marketing strategy, I certainly can't use ChatGPT. So it should be like, learn how to do the thing and then learn how to do it quicker and better than everybody else.
That's great advice. I love the fact that, well, you're going to be a best-selling author if you're not already on the white hot technology. So invitations for you to teach and speak is going to be pouring down on you. Any lessons learned going through the process of documenting 161 some odd cases, and like, did you have blind spots at the beginning of the book that you were able to identify and address in the book? What were some of the big takeaways?
Yeah, I think yes and no. So I think one interesting thing is we stand by everything in the book. So totally expected that not to be the case. Absolutely expected to push an update out after a week and then after a month. And that hasn't happened, right? Because the fundamentals haven't changed, which is how do I build a brand, and then and how can it help me? Now, are there nuances to like what the best prompt is? Yeah, definitely. And other things that it can do that I didn't think it could that aren't in the book? Yeah, definitely. So we're going to push an update out, but it hasn't changed the fundamentals. I think the lesson there is start with a process in the real world, like know the job to be done, look at how it can help you, and then move on to the next one. But work out how it can help, get really good at doing that job with the tool, then move on to the next one. So master something and then expand through different jobs.
That's
that makes a lot of sense. You know, and one of the other things that we're seeing is like now we're operating in machine scale as humans. Are there certain things we have to do differently so that we humanize this operation and we don't feel overwhelmed, which we'll talk to our next guest about later, but like, so we don't feel overwhelmed and completely like, you know, taken aback by like the immense pressure of trying to keep up with a machine.
Yeah, and I think I said it earlier, but I just think we're all going to be busier. We're going to have more topics on our desk for more brands in more countries, more products. That's really stressful, actually. That's been what's happened over the last decade or two, I think.
So the stress levels are going to go up, you think?
Yeah.
Every individual task will be easier and more, and like I'm happier doing my work now. It's less stressful for me. Like it's easier, right? But I've got more. Am I happier overall? I don't know. I'm having fun.
What a delicious paradox. Yeah, it's easier, but the volume is higher, so you're not maybe shifting the source of stress from one area to another, but it still exists. There's no question that, you know, as in a digital first, more decentralized, hyper-connected, knowledge-sharing economy, every stakeholder, employee, customer, partner, community is asked to do more because you've had a supercomputer in your pocket for well over 15 years now, 2007. So you know, it's democratizing access to information to improve decision velocity. It comes with, what is it, Superman? Was it Spider-Man? With great power comes responsibility.
Yeah, Peter Parker.
Yeah, so Peter Parker's uncle was right. Would you, as a CMO, let's say you're recruiting into your marketing team, and this is like a digital marketing trailblazers like you are, in the interview process, would you ask any candidate, anywhere in marketing, have you used ChatGPT? And if they said no, would you still consider him as a candidate? Wow. Whoa.
Wow. That was a definite.
David, he didn't even wait a second. His head was moving because obviously he's trained to anticipate questions. So, wow, that was quick. Okay.
On one hand, I have sympathies, right? Because a lot of my good friends and professional relations have not bought the book. I know that because I see every transaction, right? So on the one hand, I have massive sympathy for people. Like, we're busy, we're crazy busy, right? The economy's tough, like, we're distracted. Who's got time for a book? Okay, I get it on one level. On another level, if you believe half of what I say, like, I talked to a professor yesterday, and he was like, this can save 20 or 30% of every executive's time. If you think we're even vaguely right, you should do what we did in December, stop everything and work this out. And if you don't, or if you haven't shown any curiosity, I have questions.
Well, hey, let's go the other direction. ChatGPT, all text, all conversation, stable diffusion. talking about how we actually take images, right? On the creative side, that's going to be just as exponentially impactful.
yeah.
Like, what do you think about stable diffusion and then the ability to actually take those images and start doing the creativity, right? From in-painting to out-painting to, I don't know, generating image-to-image translations, like boom,
Yeah, Meta's
all with
text,
text.
to video, all of that. I mean,
Yeah.
all stunning. This is all the last 6 months. We've been seeing these. I mean, David probably saw it 4 years ago, but the rest of us.
I don't know. Is that really David? Like, we don't even know. He's got this avatar so embedded, right? I mean, he's got pixels in the raster level moving around. We're like,
Trust me,
hey.
Ray is trying to replace me with some generative AI co-host, and it's going to happen. So my days are numbered. But go ahead.
Well, with 309 episodes, there's enough training data. You're
Oh,
done.
totally.
You know what? We should just have the show run on its own now. Like, we'll just go and watch and break out some popcorn. I'll come over to your house, Val, and we'll just watch our own show.
What to do is feed the 309 and almost 1,000 guests and have it write a book. Like, what are the leadership lessons, business lessons, innovation lessons?
Actually, yeah, that sounds like a great
it's
intern
only
project.
60,000 words, an average business book. So
We are looking for a summer intern to use ChatGPT to write our DisrupTV book. Anyone interested, you
I
can
would
reach
give
us
the
on
entire
Twitter.
book revenue to whoever helped create that. I'm just saying.
We're here with David Boyle, Director of Audience Strategies.
You got to come back. You
You got to come back. You can follow him on BEGLEN. Oh, is that I? No, it's an L. And thank you so much for being here. So
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Congrats on the book. Really, congrats. That's amazing. To start writing something and bringing it to market, exactly at the same time of the hype of this incredible.
I just want to know which publisher came out that fast for him, because I don't know any publisher that quick.
Well, Ray, as you know, this is a show where we bring the smartest authors we know on earth. And this is typically the cleanup hitter spot where the guest comes and just hits a grand slam with her incredible wisdom. So we're delighted to have Jennifer Moss, author of Burnout Epidemic, as our final guest. Jennifer is an award-winning writer, international speaker, and workplace culture strategist with clients ranging from startups to Fortune 500 companies. Jennifer's most recent book, The Burnout Epidemic, The Rise of Chronic Stress and How We Can Fix It, was named 10 Best New Management Books for 2022 by Thinkers 50. We've had lots of Thinkers 50 folks on our show, and shortlisted for the 2021 Outstanding Works of Literature Award. Jennifer is a nationally syndicated radio columnist and freelance journalist. Jennifer writes for Harvard Business Review. Her work has appeared in CNN, Time Magazine, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Washington Post. You can follow Jennifer on Twitter at Jen, LEIGHMOSS, Jen Lee Moss. Welcome, Jennifer, to DisrupTV.
I am so happy to be here. This is just so great. I've loved the last two guests. They're fascinating.
Yeah, me too.
I know this is the best time on our Friday. But yeah, we want to talk about your book and talk about burnout. It is top of mind for everybody else. I know a lot of people that during the pandemic, they actually took the time off, right? It was overwhelming for them. They took the time to reassess what they're doing, and now they're back. But you did this research smack in the middle of the pandemic. Nobody knew how long it would last. And what did you find?
Well, it's interesting because I started writing the book and I've been researching the topic for years pre-pandemic, and it was interesting to be that person that's been saying, hey, this is a real problem, we should probably pay attention to it, and then in the pandemic have this just explode. And for me, it was so helpful to be able to have a platform, and yet I always felt bad about the fact that this is pandemic that's making me the most popular person in the room, to come to people's conferences and have these conversations. But really, it was just these age-old problems. And I've been, I'm writing my new book right now. It's titled Why Work Isn't Working, which is a kind of a big topic to deal with. But what I've been saying is that we've been iterating on a flawed design. We've basically started working in factories, and then we iterated on that when we moved, before that farming, but in the factories. And then, as we industrialized and then as we kind of went into this technology boom and information age, we've never really stopped and said, hey, is this really working? Is this how we should be working? And the pandemic forced us to have to realize that this, flawed design is hugely impactful and negatively impactful on our mental health and well-being, and is stressing us out.
In your new book, are you extending the argument you make in your current book that burnout is not an individual problem, but rather an organizational problem? Are you elaborating more on that? Can you share with us what you mean?
Yeah, that was a pretty provocative statement when I started discussing that, self-care is not the cure for burnout. And when you first you have to look at the definition of burnout, which has been a very nebulous kind of definition for a long time. It could have been kind of like a Breakfast Club, you got a whole bunch of burnouts there. What does that mean? Or is it like, the meme of like hanging over your desk and you see the guy with piled up, papers, like what is burnout? And so when in 2019, the World Health Organization actually identified burnout as institutional or occupational stress left unmanaged, that it's not in the life experience, but it's in the workplace experience, and they added it to their international classification of diseases at that time. Yeah. So it really set us into this space of saying, okay, what are the root causes and why have we been tackling it in this failed way for a really long time? A lot of what we've been doing is kind of Band-Aid solutions. When people are optimized, that's when they can use the gym. When people are optimized, that's when they do more yoga. That's where they can listen to rain for 15 seconds and they feel really, zen and it's all great. But what about all these people that are dealing with the real causes of burnout? Chronic overwork, workload is just exponentially increased. And then, we see the symptomology and like lack of fairness and lack of justice and lack of community and values mismatch. These are all root causes of burnout that are not going to be solved with breathing and, baths at the end of the night and subsidized gym memberships. And so that's where these issues have been. It's been perks versus real solutions.
Can you classify at a high level, is majority of burnout in, for example, salaried versus hourly wage class of work? What sectors or what type of work is more susceptible to burnout? Or it doesn't matter. You could find burnout in any type of work or any type of compensation model.
Well, in the research that I've gathered and the data that's been around for a long time, we're seeing it everywhere, more so, and why I named the book Epidemic. I feel like it can be labeled a pandemic at this point, but we saw it. I mean, I did research and we gathered data from 46 different countries, and they were similar qualitative and quantitative results. I mean, people are feeling it across, in places where we think are completely protected, happiest places on earth, the Netherlands. I mean, they're burning out all over the place. So it's kind of everywhere. And in sectors, there are some that are more vulnerable. Healthcare is highly vulnerable. High production environments, so those say in sales within, technology, those that are across that sector. Nonprofits are more likely to see higher levels of burnout in their employee group. And then also in high-level executive leadership, which is interesting because, you wonder if they would be less prone because they have tenure and security and financial means, but they are in an isolated environment where they don't get a lot of feedback. They have to make decisions in this sandwiched role. There's a lot that play out within that very specific group. And then generationally, our millennial Gen Z workforce are the most burned out group across the board.
Are they working harder? Are they being asked to work harder? Were they not prepped in a way? Like, did they not have the same training? Like, you always hear this, right? Like, that generation is not working as hard as the other generation. And you wonder, like, is it true or not? And then suddenly, wait, I'm in that generation. Like, how'd that happen? Right? So the root causes and those factors, I know that you're talking about the structural and some of the other ones that are, related to an industry, especially like in healthcare. Did some things change? Because when I talk to physicians, they're like, they used to actually train for that, right? They'd have like 90-hour work weeks, 100-hour work weeks, people be on call, and now everybody's like, oh, no, we're taking it easy, we're not going to go do this, I'm not interested. Is that part of it, or is that just a misconception?
Well, what the data is showing us, and it's a really interesting kind of research that just came out, and they were looking at how many wasted hours there are for physicians and for nurses and those in healthcare when it comes to actually patient care versus time and in what physicians are now calling pajama hours. It's like a 4-to-1 ratio of the time that they have to do administrative work versus time that they're actually engaging in patient care, which is really burning them out. This inefficient, when we talk about a need for improved UX and software, I mean, electronic record, record taking and measurement and management, anyone that wants to improve that is going to see, lots of value, because when we look at like the scores around the UX of these ERMs, they're like a D minus.
Oh, wow.
And because they're too complicated, and it's actually reducing patient care. There was this one hospital that actually did this, tell us everything stupid about our ERM, and they made it, part of this portal on their intranet, and had this openness to have all of their staff send them the most stupid things that their ERM does, and people would win awards for the best suggestions and the stupidest thing that it does.
Yep.
And they saved almost 5,000 nursing hours just in 1 year, and improve that patient care and reduce malpractice suits. Like, all of these things that we're realizing are happening are because of so many inefficiencies. And this is across the board. Processes inside the pandemic completely shifted the way we work. I mean, we went from 4% of the global workforce to 35% of the global workforce within a month. And that's unbelievable, because basically anyone that could work remote was working remote. And so then again, it's like how we lead, how we communicate, the virtual environment of leading. And people have been caught in this crisis mode, and they haven't gone back to actually learn better, to be more efficient in their skill building. The way they're using technology is really slow. I say it's like pouring glue in already, lagging wheel. And that's what, unfortunately, until we actually get people back trained on the tech that they're using, then it's just going to be this sense of pajama hours, people working at 11 o'clock at night. We call it pajama hours because it's like, it's fun work, right? I'm just catching up. I have a glass of wine. It's not really work. It's just catching up. And meanwhile, that becomes a kind of a 24/7 cycle. And that's a big part of why we are burning out.
No, it's a great point in healthcare, because they're working for the EMR, and the insurance company is not for the patients anymore, and that's been a lot of it. And in some healthcare institutions, we've seen these 5'9" robots helping the nursing staff out, doing non-patient care, like deliveries or moving prescriptions around, or meds and supplies, and it's hopefully helping with that kind of work. Sorry, Vala, go ahead. So
No. I just remember when I was early in my career and I had leadership management responsibility, and if I sensed someone didn't have the right mood, or maybe they looked tired, or they were a little more agitated than normal, and this was at a startup environment, a blue collar, hardcore startup environment, I would spot bonus them to make sure that they would get in a better mood, or I don't think I knew about burnout. Naivete and just not being a great manager and being young. But I remember literally walking around just giving Amex cards and bonuses, and I thought I could maybe help burnout or this chronic stress with monetary surprise rewards. And when I look back, I just remind myself what an awful manager I was. But can you tell us, leaders experience burnout too? So how do we recognize and prevent burnout, especially if you have this awesome responsibility of managing people?
I don't think you were wrong. I think it's great that you are, you're paying attention and just recognizing when people are feeling low. And that's a first step. I mean, empathetic leadership is still really great. And I'm sure everyone was really happy to get a filled up Amex card. I'm sure that was great. But I think, what we're realizing is that in the first time ever in history, we saw reasons why people are leaving. The attrition numbers were so high, and they've actually remained the same. They're still at 41% of the global workforce looking at either leaving their job or have left their job, planning to quit. And a lot of that is, interestingly, used to be pay was always the reason why people moved. And now it's lack of empathy from my employer, and overwork as the switch for number one and number two, and then pay is third, which we've never seen before. There's just so much of that, change. And when we're looking at identifying burnout, because we want to make sure that our employees aren't leaving because of lack of empathy and overwork, major causes of burnout, and that's how we should be identifying. We want to look for signs like fatigue, withdrawing, someone that was an A+, awesome, passionate employee, and then suddenly they're not. I mean, this isn't that they're just not high performing anymore. And we tend to misdiagnose performance or underperformance instead of actually realizing it's probably chronic stress and burnout. We need to be asking people regularly, what is the workload, assessing workload, looking at the processes and inefficiencies, because we're looking, and I'm just doing some work with an organization right now. What we found is they have trust, they have healthy relationships, and they're doing really well, but burnout is extraordinarily high. And so when we dug into the data, we saw workload, yes, but then when you think, okay, how do I address workload? That seems pretty like a big thing to target. We still have metrics, we still have to grow. We are under-resourced. Then we started to look into, well, it's actually process enablement and getting people through understanding process, but also helping to guide them post-process, coming back and making sure they know what they're doing. And also even just further upstream, asking people who are in the work, who use the software every day or use the technology every day, what do they need, instead of having it siloed where development's over here and then they weren't involved in the process at all. So all of these things have to happen way before we get to the point of people hitting the wall and burning out. And that's what we need to start targeting, is not helping people when they're already burned out, helping people at that point. Giving a person that's burned out a week off, to cure their burnout, is just only sending them back to the same fire, and that's not helping. And so that piece of it, recognizing that people need more than just Band-Aid, and helping really get to the systems problems that are failing, that requires asking intelligent questions and asking them repeatedly and following up. And probably why, and I'll just add this, the fastest growing job on LinkedIn right now is the employee experience manager.
Wow.
And I think that's really interesting, is it's like they're the ones that will look at enablement from hiring all the way through to onboarding, and then throughout their potential career in that organization, which is really interesting.
I love that. I mean, you watch pro teams, whether it's basketball or football, there's always strength and conditioning coaches, right, with the assistant coaches, head coach, observing the players and helping them, and I just don't know if managers like myself really, mental health is health, so it's just, I don't think I was trained to.
But I think, Vala, didn't we grow up in an era where it's like, love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life? Like, you're having fun. Like, how are you going to get burned out? Like, that's not really
I'm talking about when I was in my 20s at a startup, and we talk about pajamas. I mean, I literally went to work in pajamas because I knew I was going to sleep overnight. But that was a young kid out of college, and a graduate advisor who was like a boot camp Navy SEAL type advisor. So I think I entered a startup workforce conditioned to accept pain. But now when I reflect, I'm like, wow, like I really just, I may have recognized an A player performing at a B level, or an agitated person, or someone that had maybe mood fluctuations that were unexpected. But I just felt like a quick Band-Aid would solve, and in some instances maybe it did, but in long term I wasn't really helping create a culture where you would recognize burnout. So every manager should read your book, Jennifer, is what I'm saying, because people assume I was a good manager and I wasn't. So I wish I had your book.
I love Ray, what you said though about love what you do, never work a day in your life. I wrote an article for Harvard Business Review around how that's a myth, and that I love what I do. Am I prone to burnout? Absolutely, because my passion, there's really cool research on harmonious versus obsessive passion. And those that are actually startup founders tend to be married to their idea. Failure is not an option. It's sunk cost constantly, and we then we're just like, we can't, this is our baby. Like our attachment is very strange to our, to the things that we're building. It's weird. And so what happens is that we don't act as our own boss, which we need to kind of level up and say, would I allow my employees to behave this way? And then we're really good though at saying, okay, well, don't do that. Do as I say, not as I do. But when we model these behaviors, it's just invisible. It's invisible pressures on people. If you're answering your email, how do you think that whatever, on your weekends, on vacation, how do you not assume that your employees are going to do the same? Because we're modeling bad behavior. And so instead of just looking at we can do it, we have to look at, can the whole organization be sustainably working if they are not taking what I call productive rests? We keep talking about breaks. You take time off. You're not taking time off. You're taking productive rest so that you can be more productive and be more engaged and be more inspired when you go back to work.
I love that. Ray and we're going to have to just keep reading your book, because when I text or email Ray, anytime, any day, within 5 minutes, he responds. So Ray, we read Jennifer's book. Please, Jennifer, point him to the chapters he needs to.
They had a bet at a place I worked at once that I would burn out and go call some helpline. And I don't know. I think I won the bet. So. But I'm going to read the book anyways. We're here with Jennifer Moss, author of Burnout Epidemic. You can follow her on Twitter at Jen Leigh Moss, LEIGHMOSS. Thank you so much for sharing your insights at this critical moment. I think everyone's going to learn a lot from there, including myself.
Jennifer, that was a grand slam. Thank you so much. You're awesome. You're awesome. Thank you. Wow. What an important data point.
I don't think that book comes with every, immigrant founder. You don't do that until 10 years later, and you're like, darn, I wish I'd have learned these lessons.
Well, so as an immigrant refugee, my mom and dad worked 7 days a week, 2 jobs for 25 years.
Yep.
So I don't remember vacations in high school, junior high, just parents were working 7 days a week. So, so you do have that, you have a work ethic that appreciates opportunity to have a job,
live to work. Right?
But again, as you get older, you get wiser. You realize that sometimes you got to slow down to go even faster. Yeah. But the fact that she said it's no longer compensation and salary, the number one reason people leave is burnout related. Not enough empathy, not enough reasonable, workload. It just means that business leaders should read the book and reflect and change and put it into practice. Employee experience manager as the hottest job. That's great. Great.
We're going to be talking about employee experiences at our conference in Napa, March 27th and 28th at the Ambient Experience Summit. So
it can definitely be mindful. Alleviate, burnout at Napa.
Well, that's a short remedy. That's not like a root cause.
By the way, I'm not recommending that. That was a bad joke. All right. Before we talk about, let me just talk about next week's episode. We have Gar Ponette, Chief Impact Officer at Reply and host of Multi-Universe Podcast. Miguel Gamino, who's been a guest in the past, Chief Executive Officer and founding partner at Simplicity. He was a former Executive Vice President at MasterCard. The first time I met him, he was CIO of San Francisco and then CDO of New York City. So he's had some major assignments in the last decade or so. And Jeremy, the author of Idea Flow, will be our final guest for next week. It's episode 310. Ray, in 1 minute, could you just summarize?
I thought we were out of that. Look, I mean, we're changing every environment around us is changing. And what we're seeing right now is a focus on operational costs. We're focusing on growth with reasonable growth at right efficiencies. And that's kind of what Cristina was talking about. How do we actually do this efficiently? How do we actually put into place these mechanisms that allow us to grow, but not grow out of control? I think that's what investors are looking at. It's something very valuable there. What we learned on the ChatGPT side is, there's a lot of tools that are going to be out there that are actually going to improve our ability. Like we're short 11 million workers still, like even with that jobs report, which was crazy this morning, right? But that means
500,017.
I know.
I was
crazy.
watching the experts on CNBC forecast the number right before, and it was like 180, 200,
they're all
210.
300
They were way off.
They're all 300K off, right? And so we're actually gonna have to operate on machine scale versus human scale. And I think we're gonna see a lot of tools that are gonna pop up. And if you don't have those tools, people like David are not going to be hiring you at all, right? And that's gonna be some of the things that we see. But that also talks to the point of burnout. And so what we've really done well is our producer has masterfully crafted this thing about where the future of work and business is heading, right? And the question is like, how do we actually change the dynamics and the root causes to help us get out of that burnout paradigm? And I think there's a lot we can do. So a lot to learn here for leaders trying to figure out how to change their environment, how to improve their workforce, and more importantly, how to improve the bottom line while doing good. So thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. And if you can find work that you love, do it. Thank you for joining us. If it's Friday, it's DisrupTV.
You can tell we love our job.
We do. We love our guests. Thank you.
We love our guests too. Happy Friday, everybody. So.
Bye.